I'm Kevin Theos. I'm the president of the USPTA Southern Division. I am delighted to have three outstanding interviewees today. Chris Peck is a USPTA tennis professional. He was a collegiate player at Eckerd College and Oglethorpe University and is the owner and tennis director of the Smyrna Tennis Academy. He's been a tennis coach for over 15 years. And Chris, thank you very much for joining us.
Wow, thanks for having me. This is a great experience.
Chris, you wrote a terrific article for our USPTA Southern Standard newsletter about focusing on what you do well and referring those who have needs outside of your niche to other professionals. Tell us a little bit about how you figured out your niche.
Well, to be honest with you, it kind of came from just maybe a little bit of a general burnout. At the very beginning of my career, I tried to be a tennis pro for everyone doing, cardio tennis and video analysis and adults and teams and juniors, high level, low level, beginner, intermediate. And it just kind of got to be too much. I was bouncing around too much. And I personally felt that as an independent pro, as a business owner, that was just too much for me that was just too many roles for me to fill. And if I had maybe like a larger club and thought, okay, I'm going to have a guy that does this, or I'm going to have a woman who does just the cardio tennis, or however that structure is. But for me, there was too much bouncing around, and I eventually got to the point where I felt, you know what, every one of my programs is kind of mediocre. It was just watered down. So I decided just to, kind of take the leap of faith and say, you know what, I'm going to focus on what I feel like I can do best and what I feel is the most sustainable. And so right now, we only focus on junior players, and that's it. So there's no adult programming whatsoever. And even more specifically, we focus on beginner and intermediate players only. So once they get to a certain level, once we bring them up to a certain level, I farm them out to other people, because I find that if I'm blending too many levels and, Johnny over here is, he's got a national ranking, but now if he's not getting the competition he needs, he's not getting what he needs, and my other players are feeling overwhelmed and he's feeling underwhelmed, and it just sending mixed messages to the players. So just really over the several years has just carved itself out to, I'm going to focus on beginner players, get them to the intermediate level, and once they start getting really serious and getting their skills highly focused, then I send them to other academies or other independent pros and say, listen, I've got a great player here. He's ready for the next level, but I'm going to focus on the next generation, bringing him up to this level. And that has been immensely successful, because I think, when you think of an academy, I think for most of us, and myself included at the beginning, is you think, all right, what can I do to create the next 30 Roger Federers? But from a business point of view, once you realize that goal, even though I try and get every player to a high level, that goal is very difficult to attain when you realize that the vast majority of tennis players aren't ever going to make it to that high level. So for us, the sustainable, the model with the highest ceiling was, let's make the best possible experience for the beginners, to the intermediate players, and then once they get to that next level, send them on to greener pastures and let them flourish in different circles.
Okay, well, one thing that occurs to me is that you have people who, maybe adults, who are taking, cardio or something along those lines, or just regular clinics with you, but at some point you transitioned away. I mean, was this in sort of steps, or did you just, like, on a Monday, people showed up and everything was different? It was just going to be juniors.
Well, I did slowly phase it out, and, and it was tough too, because our cardio tennis program was on a wait list for every single time slot. It was a great, great program. But again, it was, the having to switch roles where I'm telling the 30 plus, cardio player, developing that communication style and then crossing over to the junior communication style was like, there was just, there was just a little bit of a disconnect for me, but I slowly phased it out, just said, listen, we're only going to be focusing on juniors in the coming months. So our offerings are going to be less and less, but you know what? I love that you've supported our program over the past, and I'm glad to refer you. So, I never left any of our players, high and dry. I said, listen, here's Ted down the street. He's a great coach. He does similar stuff to what I was doing. And, and that has, from a community standpoint, that has really helped a lot of my peers too. Maybe some of the independent pros or players who are just getting started, who are more than qualified, but maybe just don't have the business. So we're happy to just refer any and all of those products and services to local coaches.
Okay. And I'm wondering, and that's terrific to hear, because we often hear stories of pros not necessarily getting along with each other. And, this is really an instance where you're sending business their way. So I'm sure that helps with the relationships with pros in your area.
Oh, yes, very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering, as far as on the business end again of phasing things out, was there a sort of there surely was an awareness of, let's say, cardio tennis as an example. It sounds like that particular offering was quite profitable for you. Was the phase out based at least partly on, the ones that were most lucrative, but outside of what you ultimately wanted to focus on, you kept those a little bit longer, and you at the early stages got rid of the areas that were less profitable?
So if I think back, I probably had three major sources of income. One, the junior academy, which I've always been doing. Two, were a lot of my I had a lot of ladies USTA and Alta. That's the basically the Atlanta version of USTA leagues. And cardio tennis, which I had it open to all levels. The way we structured it was, if you could swing at a ball, you're going to get something out of this class. So those were my three areas. The one that I least liked doing were my USTA and Alta teams, just because there was a lot of bouncing around, and the schedules became incredibly difficult, because again, it was one of those things where now there were so many teams and we were so highly sought after, the schedules was getting very, very packed. So that was the first one that I let go. And I gave my teams, a full season, just, kind of mentally prepare and say, you need to start interviewing other coaches, because I'm going to start phasing this out. And then as I started transitioning away from that, we kept the cardio tennis going for probably another month, and just allowed people time to, find different avenues to get what they were looking for. And then we just slowly transitioned into juniors only. And what was really great about it is that a lot of the adults that I was working with in the ladies teams and the cardio tennis, almost all of their kids are in our program, just because I've built that adult relationship, and they see that, okay, Chris delivers a good service. I'm going to have my kids join his academy. So yeah, there was a phasing out, and but overall, now I feel very pleased with anyone who was with a program of mine, that now they're getting that from another coach in a nearby area.
Okay, well, I'm wondering, what do you like most about working in this area? You really carved out a nice niche for yourself and an expertise, but what do you like? Yeah, what's the best thing?
Well, I think what's really great about, working with beginner to intermediate players is that just about every class, there's going to be like a major breakthrough for one of these players, because, if Janie wasn't even hitting the ball, she's 6 years old, and then on lesson number 3 in our academy, now she's hitting the ball over and maybe even playing a point or two. So there's like that real spark of, oh my gosh, I finally did it. That breakthrough moment. Whereas, when I worked with advanced players in the past, they can rally for 100, and it's, and that's awesome. But, it's expected at that level. And, you don't get those like massive breakthroughs and the eye opening, and you see the kids getting excited, and then the parents get excited, the coaches get excited. So for me, it's overall, there's just a better energy on the court, and it's just more fun to work with the kids in that level. They really dig it. And to see them have those great breakthroughs is a lot of fun.
What's the hardest thing about working with those levels?
Well, I kind of agree with Lane on this one. You do have to have the patience of a saint. I mean, I'm sure all of us, we've coached juniors at some level. You're going to get, I think what's the saying? Sometimes it's like herding kittens. So you really have to have patience. You have to understand what it's like to be a kid. You're thinking on court, you're thinking, okay, if you're from an adult point of view, you're like, wow, God, I wish they could just be quiet or get in line. But remember, they're out there, they're having fun. Even when they're goofing off, that's like the best part of their day. But from an adult point of view, it can get a little bit nerve-wracking. So I'd say you need to come into each lesson with the mindset of patience. And then also something I learned the hard way is I have a detailed lesson plan. Like there is not an ounce of fat on the day. If I have a summer camp and I have 45 kids and four courts, I might have 6 coaches working at that time, one of which might just be it's their turn to take a kid to the restroom and back, that kind of thing. So I have learned that has made things immensely easier, is to have a very detailed, almost to the minute plan. But that is a very hard part of it when you're dealing with kids, because obviously short attention spans, they're not the best at listening at times. So patience and lesson plan are absolutely critical for this niche.
I wonder, there are pros who, they earn a living doing, like you were in the beginning, doing everything that they can. They're servicing all different levels and ages, and that there has to be at some point a level of or degree of comfort that they're going to be able to earn a living doing, maybe focusing on what they do best. And it could be juniors, it may be adults. Could you talk a little bit about the business model, like kind of how this works, say on a longer term basis?
Sure. So I'll give you my blueprint, what works for me. During the school year, we have, I call it our junior academy. So we have 3 different levels. You can either come in as a beginner, intermediate, advanced beginner, or intermediate. And we have several different days and times in which you would sign up for. I run it in 6-week increments. So when Johnny decides he wants to do tennis, he's going to sign it for 6 weeks. Most of my players do 1 day for an hour and a half a week. So if Johnny signs up on Mondays, I see him every Monday at 6. We have a group. I try and keep the ratio, depending on the level and age, at about 6 to 1. If it's a little bit more advanced, 8 to 1 per coach. So I have several different levels that they can sign up. But during the school year, it's a 6-week increments. 99% of my players do every 6 weeks throughout the year. So that goes from August all the way to June. And then from June, we cancel that program altogether. June and July, we go into our summer camp program. The way that I personally like doing it, the way I've structured my business is I do a 9 to 12 summer camp, Monday through Thursday. We don't do Fridays because inevitably it's going to rain. We don't have indoor court. So I always book Friday out as a makeup day. That has been, and I've tried it every which way. That to me has been the most successful for our summer camp. We just go 9 to 12. We used to do the all day thing, but I found that, by 3 or 4 o'clock, the kids are wiped out, the coaches are wiped out, and the last hour and a half, 2 hours, no one's really getting anything out of it anyway. So during the school year, I go 6 weeks, depending on the age and level. It'd be, between an hour and 2 hour class once or twice a week. During the summer, we go 9 to 12. So it's a 3-hour camp Monday through Thursday with a rain day kind of buffered in towards the end. That's all we do. That is top to bottom. That is exactly how we do things. As far as the scheduling goes, from the business point of view. Okay,
fantastic. Well, Chris, we have less than a minute here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with folks?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. One thing that, I've learned, especially over the last maybe year, 2 years, is to just be willing to change. Ask yourself questions at the end of each day or at the end of each program and say, what could I have done a little bit better? And then, for me, I ask the players. I just be honest and say, hey, did you like that game that we played? What did you think of that forehand drill that we did? Was it good? Was it bad? Don't just assume that you always are the best or the most resourceful? I ask my coaches, my assistant coaches all the time, what would you have done maybe a little bit differently about today, or how did we handle X situation, things like that. So I'm constantly asking questions, and I think that has been one of the major attributes to our program.
All right. Fantastic, Chris. Well, thank you so much.